Hey everyone, I finished reading the first 3 issues of Masters of the Universe Masterverse, and it was underwhelming. I was really expecting a lot from this. I had read that this was going to be an anthology series, a whole bunch of different artists were going to be working on it, and I think an anthology series is a great idea for a franchise like Masters of the Universe, where there's so many different incarnations and directions you could take a story in. But unfortunately, it's kind of undermined by the fact that all the stories are written by Tim Seeley, and I like Tim Seeley usually. This, I don't think, is his strongest work. There's some good stuff in there, but I think as an anthology, it'd be a lot more interesting if each story was written by a different person. Preferably like someone working in, like, with the artist who's also working on that story. So the main story of this is it starts off in, I think, the Revelation world, so that kind of sucks. When Adam says that he's lame, old, and depressing. We see Sorceress and Zodak, who are basically the Watcher from the old Marvel What If comics. Just straight up, they're the Watcher. The first story in here is very weird. I don't think this was the best story to start out issue 1 with. There's a backstory about a four-armed god named Procrustes, and then we see, like, it's really dark and moody artwork. We see Adam hiking through, like, shadow, and then the very next page is all bright and colorful. We see He-Man, Teela, and Orko, we see some bad guys attacking, and it looks bright. Like, this isn't the same comic, is it? But then it turns out at the end, yeah, this does tie in with that first page where it's all dark, shadowy, and there's the statue of Procrustes. So then we get some cameos, and one of the big things that stands out with the Masterverse comics is that they really feel less like organic stories and ideas, less than they feel like a toy commercial. Like, oh hey, there's Batros, and we get a little clue as to if he gets a toy, it'll most likely look like that. Then Scareglow shows up, and then Castle Grayskull Man. I like Castle Grayskull Man. It'd be cool to have him, like, get a new figure, because the old classics line is really pricey and scarce these days. So the first story, it's okay. It's kind of cool to see this alternate take on the series, but for the first story in here, I think they could have picked a better, like something a little more traditional, maybe. And then we get Sergio Aragones' comic, which is cool. I like Sergio Aragones. If you're a fan of his, and like maybe this is something you'd be interested in, it's pretty much just like one of his typical comics. It's his recognizable style. It's He-Man with some gags thrown in there. It really feels like if Mad Magazine decided to do like a He-Man parody, and this was Sergio Aragones' contribution. There's nothing really super deep to say about it. It's nice. And then the last page, we have a whole mess of cameos at the bottom, foreshadowing, previewing what's going to be coming in the next few issues. We see CGI Adam and Cringer, we see Ram Mam, we see Jitsu, and He-Man with some crazy armor on, we see a Viking He-Man, we see Skeletor with that weird helmet that the one Masterverse toy had. Issue 2, I like the cover. The cover is cool. We see a couple different versions of Zodak. Not that that really means anything at this moment. But yeah, right into the first story. And this one's all about an alternate version of He-Man and the Masters. They're in a ship going somewhere. Jitsu is being held prisoner because, I don't know. And then He-Man comes to fight Keldor. The artwork's nice. Story's pretty basic. Not really that interesting. Then we get the weirdest looking comic by far in any of these. It's black and white, very kind of Sin City inspired looking. Also, this is a confusing comic, and the art style does not help. It is like way too overly detailed. Some of it looks good, some of it is just weird. Like Trapjaw is a bartender? And he's overweight. I don't get it. This comic is very strange, and the tone is all over the place, and I don't know, like, really what's going on. One of the big problems with a lot of the stories in these Masterverse comics is they're not based on any particular incarnation of He-Man. They're just off the top of Tim Seeley's head, I'm assuming. Sergio Aragones's, I think, is probably the closest to any of the original He-Man things. Like, it's kind of sort of similar to the old mini-comics. Then this one ends with a bizarre cliffhanger. Zodak is suddenly like, I have to make Adam suffer. Why? I don't know. This is a thing that I guess he feels like doing now. So then, issue 3 with Teela on the cover, when we see a big snake behind her. Is this going to have the Snake Men? No, not really. It doesn't even really tie in at all with snakes or the snake theme Teela's armor has. This picks up right where the last one left off. Zodak is threatening Adam, so Sorceress shoots him in the face. Then he shoots her back, she threatens him, and then throws him into this magic whatchama-thingador thing. Then we see the first of the stories here. I guess it's Teela, looking kind of weird. Her hair is definitely more brown than the red it usually is. She fights with a very skinny He-Man. Beast Man shows up, the Masterverse Beast Man with the bear headdress thing. Oh, and then Granomir makes a little cameo for no reason, just to get murdered, apparently. What was the point of that? So then the next one is probably the comic I liked the most? Maybe? I don't really know what to think of this one. So we have Ram Man, Viking He-Man, Manny Faces, and Stratos. They're a gang of barbarian pirates, and they're just exploring the world or something. They get into a little fight with some wolves, they explore, they find Skeletor torturing Sorceress, and so Stratos, Ram Man, and Manny Faces are like, we gotta help her, and He-Man's like, nah. And then they're like, oh, okay. And He-Man gets drunk and falls asleep, and his friends run off to save Sorceress without him. He wakes up and he finds his friends dead, and so takes revenge on Skeletor. And then Sorceress tells him that she's a spirit or something. So then Adam learns that with great power comes great responsibility. End. And then the last page is Zodak yelling, enough! Which, yeah, I kind of feel that way too. Then Sorceress has a really weird line here, saying that, even in realms plagued by war and death, He-Man prevails in spirit, which is kind of especially weird with the first story, considering he spends most of that story knocked out. Unless Teela's supposed to be the He-Man in that situation. Then this one ends with the cliffhanger of showing the CGI He-Man. So, yeah, I guess we're getting the first story that's actually based on a pre-existing He-Man thing. So these were... not really what I wanted from a Masters of the Universe anthology series. You know, my favorite anthology series of all time when it comes to comics is Star Wars Tales. I think that handled the idea of an anthology series better than, like, any comic I've seen out there. I've seen, like, Transformers anthologies and, what else? There's Power Ranger anthologies, kinda, sorta, in the annuals. Predator and Alien, they've gotten anthology comics. But Star Wars Tales was interesting because they really were just completely different stories set wherever the writers and artists felt like setting things. They had stories of all kinds. There was a yaoi romance about Chewbacca and Han. Yeah, really. That happened. There was a goofy, like, Dennis the Menace family circus comic about Darth Maul, a little kid Darth Maul running amok, and then being found and trained by Palpatine to be a Sith. There was a comic all about Darth Maul being trained to be a Sith, and taking on this Jedi and having to find some clever way to outsmart and murder the Jedi. It was an interesting bunch of stories, and they had stories about some really obscure characters. In the very first Star Wars movie, there's that scene where the stormtroopers find Leia up on the ship. There's one set for stun, and then she, like, shoots the guy in the face. There's a story all about that guy who got shot in the face. And then there's a story about Skippy the Jedi droid. That droid that had a bad motivator way back in the first movie. Whole comic all about him. Or her, whatever. So anyway, that's kind of what I was looking forward to about Masterverse. I was hoping for something with a whole bunch of different artists and writers all giving their own takes on He-Man, but instead what we got, like, it was fine, I guess, but it doesn't really inspire my imagination that much. It is cool that Tim Seeley, I guess, looked at the toys or whatever and was like, what kind of adventures did these guys have? But I don't know. I feel like these stories might have been better as like pack-in mini comics with the action figures. As standalone comics, I just don't really think they work as well. Especially not that black and white one. I don't know what that was all about. Like, the tone of that was weird. The art was weird. The story was weird. The characters were weird. And one of the like, I don't know. I was just kind of hoping for, like, I wanted to see a comic set in the New Adventures world. Let's see a comic all about the New Adventures He-Man. Let's see a comic set with the movie, the live-action Dolph Lundgren movie. What kind of adventures did these guys have? What did Orko look like in that universe? That'd be something interesting. Say they did a comic about New Adventures and they introduce Orko into it. That'd be really cool to see how that kind of world would utilize a character like Orko who wasn't actually ever in the show. The whole frame of the comics is Revelations, I think. If not, it's a very heavily inspired by He-Man Revelation world. Merman has his stupid ugly face, and Adam is like skinny, wimpy Adam for some reason. We have the Dolph Lundgren movie characters in the Masterverse line, at least He-Man and Skeletor, so they could totally do a story about them if, like, the limitations of Masterverse are just what they're going to turn into toys or what they have toys of. Although a lot of the characters in here, they don't have toys, and the differing art styles is kind of weird if it is intended to be a direct tie-in with the Masterverse toy line, which generally has one look, unless they're doing something like in a completely different style, like the CGI He-Man. The He-Man and Skeletor from that series are designed like very stylized. They have the really big muscles and very tiny, skinny legs, which matches the art style of the show. So yeah, I'll probably pick up the next issue because I do like the CGI He-Man show. It is really good. So that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.